I am delighted to receive your message. It appears that I have a perfect opportunity to engage with you. Lately, I have developed a keen interest in horror themes, and I have been incessantly inquiring about captivating books, movies, and stories in this genre. Recently, my grandfather shared a spine-chilling tale that I would like to recount. My grandfather hails from a tiny village in the Far East, so minuscule that it has never been christened with its own name. Instead, it bears the bland title of 71st Kilometer, the name of the train platform. To reach the village, one must trudge through the taiga on a well-trodden path for over half an hour. In the past, the village hosted one of the many gulag camps, a relatively small one with no more than a few hundred inmates who were tasked with maintaining the railroad's functionality. However, in 1946, after the deputy head of the camp went missing, the decision was made to shut down the camp and relocate the prisoners elsewhere. Nonetheless, someone had to watch over this section of the railway, resulting in the creation of this anonymous settlement. One fine summer day, when my grandfather was still a 13-year-old boy, he ventured out to a nearby lake with his two pals, Misha and Jura. The trail to the lake ran alongside the forest's edge and had been walked numerous times. On this particular day, the trio decided to switch things up by taking a stroll in the woods. Veering off the beaten path, they headed towards the lake, admiring the beauty of the Far East forest and admiring the snags they encountered on the way. They were so engrossed in their surroundings that they failed to realize they had lost their way and become lost. Fortunately, being tough, rural boys, they didn't succumb to panic, although they were admittedly a bit scared. Misha, the eldest of the trio at the time, 14 years old, and also the most audacious, took charge and ordered them to continue straight ahead without making any turns. Misha's father was an experienced hunter who frequently took his son into the woods. Thus, Misha was familiar with the terrain and knew that a small mountain stream ran in the direction he had chosen. This stream curved around the forest like a crescent before flowing into the lake they were heading towards. Therefore, even if they followed the stream, they would not stray too far into the depths of the taiga. With a plan in place, the boys strode forward with determination along the designated route, eagerly anticipating their arrival at the coveted stream. After several hours of trekking through the hills, the boys heard the long-awaited murmurs of the stream in the distance. Filled with joy, they hastened towards the river, eager to cool down after their lengthy walk. However, their excitement was short-lived. While running towards the stream, Jura tripped over an obstacle and tumbled to the ground with a shout. Bewildered by what had happened, the boys froze in their tracks before rushing to where their friend had fallen. To their surprise, they discovered a circular hole carved into the stone. Jura was invisible, but his cries could be distinctly heard emanating from beneath the stone block. Misha exclaimed in bewilderment, "Yurok, are you okay? How did you survive?" "I'm alive, but I'm badly hurt," came Yurok's pitiful response. "Don't worry, we'll help you out," reassured Misha. Despite their best efforts, the boys were unable to rescue their friend. Even the longest branch they had chopped down couldn't reach Yura's whimpering voice from beneath the stone block. As darkness crept in, the boys made the difficult decision to return to the village for help. Upon reaching their parents, they were scolded for their recklessness. However, the boys were more concerned about their friend, who was left alone somewhere in the deep woods, trapped under a stone slab. The stone slab with a peculiar round-shaped hole was reminiscent of a dolmen, an ancient funerary structure found in many parts of the world where ancient civilizations once thrived. It seemed that the boys had stumbled upon one such structure during their excursion. After informing the locals about the incident, they gathered with all the tools they had on hand and headed towards the forest. However, their plans were interrupted by an elderly Nanai woman who started to express her superstitions about dolmens, which frightened even the bravest men. They decided to wait for daybreak before continuing their rescue mission. The next morning, they arrived at the site where the boy was trapped, but to their dismay, he was nowhere to be found. The men were in shock and started to weep, just like the Nanai woman had predicted. They attempted to call out into the hole, but there was no response. Eventually, they decided to widen the passage to get through. It took almost a whole day to create a hole big enough to pass through. However, When one of the men finally climbed down the rope, he found only the boy's gray cap lying on the damp stone floor, and a few meters away, a gaping black hole in the floor. The slab they had dug through was just a small part of a large dolmen. Underneath it was a square room, about 5 by 5 meters in size, with a dozen holes in the walls and floor, leading to unknown places. Ura's parents held on to hope for several days, sitting by the whole day and night, waiting for their beloved son to return. But as time went by, their hope dwindled. Eventually, the local community came together to bury the area and prevent any other unfortunate accidents from occurring there. If everything had gone as expected, it would have been just a regular story of a boy falling into a hole and being lost. After all, there are thousands of dolmens all over the world. However, it was not that simple. 5 years after the incident, my grandfather was saying goodbye to his son, who was joining the army, near a train station with the interesting name Kilometer 45. The train drivers discovered a young man nearby. It was difficult to determine his age as he was very thin and disfigured, but his voice revealed his young age. Upon hearing about the discovery, the parents of Ura were naturally curious and immediately went to the district center to see the young man. To their surprise, it was indeed Jura, but he looked completely different. The once cheerful and bright boy was now unrecognizable. He had empty eye sockets where his blue eyes used to be. Both of his hands were missing, and his soul seemed to have been shattered. He rambled on about a God living in mortal flesh, people long dead, and those not yet born, and even mentioned something about the deputy head of the camp, which was quite disturbing. During his stay in the psychiatric hospital, Ura continued to struggle with his mental health. He had nightmares and would often scream and yell, disturbing the peace of the hospital. It was decided that he needed more specialized care, and he was transferred to a different facility. However, after 3 years had passed, my grandfather received news that Ura had not died of natural causes, but had taken his own life. He had jumped out of the 5th floor window of his ward, but was still alive when nurses found him. His last words were haunting and remained with my grandfather and me. "The God inside me made me do it. He calls me and I go to him," said the man. "And what will you do when he calls you too?"